Good afternoon and welcome to the Emergent Tech series of the Leadership and Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Savage, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by not one guest, but two. I'm joined by Nav and Fergus from Carbon Underwriting. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Yeah, all good. Yeah. Cheers, Gavin. Cheers for having us on as well.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. I think it's going to be a good podcast.
Yes, it's. I was just saying to you guys, it's the first on the tech series that we've had two on, and I know you guys have got, your roles for batting in terms of questions, but I'm sure we'll navigate through them fine. I think before we begin, Nav, maybe this is probably one for you to take. I just wanted, before we dive right in, if you could, for those that don't know who Carbon Underwriting are, if you could maybe briefly explain what the business is, what the mission is within the insurance space for Carbon Underwriting.
I think I'll let Fergus answer that side of the things.
Okay.
I'm often the techie side in the conversation, and I think Fergus will do good justice to answer this question.
Yeah, it's a double. I'm definitely more on the insurance side. We've had to do a couple of nice.
Okay, so we'll define that. So you're the insurance guy, and Nav, you're the tech guy.
That's the roles we've got here. I'm insurance, a little bit of tech. Nav's tech with a bit of insurance thrown in on the side.
Yeah.
Okay.
So well, just maybe to introduce myself quickly. So Fergus, I've been at Carbon for 2.5 years now, and I lead the analytics team at Carbon, internally known as the Quants. We're a bit of a sort of like project management / analytics engineering, bit of data engineering, sort of the whole sort of startup sort of vibe of doing a bit of everything and trying to get everyone involved. But yeah, I'll roll on with Carbon now. So Carbon, we started off as a syndicate in a box. We were the first sort of syndicate in a box to start. For those that don't know what a syndicate in a box is, it's a Lloyd's scheme set up to inspire innovation within the sort of Lloyd's market. It requires that you have a sort of unique selling point, because the idea of it is that you can start up an insurance company with sort of very little money behind you. You normally need sort of about 100 million to sort of maybe even 500 million pounds to set up an insurance company or insurance syndicate. They wanted anyone to be able to start with sort of 10 to 15 million pounds, but you needed to have this unique selling point because there's a lot of sort of these giant incumbents in the market, sort of these sort of, I won't name names to be fair, but sort of the very large insurance companies, they've been going for sort of hundreds of years in some cases. And they're just sort of trundling along. They sort of own the market because they've got such a large share, but they're not really doing any innovating, because what they've done has worked for many years now, worked for hundreds of years really since the Lloyd's market was set up. Lloyd's just wanted to inspire some innovations and sort of going into new classes, new technologies and that sort of business. And so our founders left their previous jobs to start up a syndicate in a box with the intention of making it a sort of a data focused and sort of, they wanted to call it sort of the first like data focused syndicate. And it meant that we could run it essentially as a tech company rather than an insurance company. So this has inspired a lot of sort of the values that Carbon holds. We've got a very large tech team for an insurance company. Sort of 40% of our headcount is technology, which is extraordinarily rare for any sort of insurance company, and 60% on the insurance side. Over the last 3 years, we've sort of gone from strength to strength. We've gone from sort of 15 million pounds of premium our first year, 42.5, 65. This year we're doing 150 million premium, so with 10 times our premium in just like 4 years, with ambitions to be doing sort of 500 million within the next sort of 4 or 5 years time. We graduated to be a full syndicate as of sort of the 1st of January this year. And that brings with it sort of some new challenges, both from like a regulatory perspective, but also it allows us to expand into sort of a load more territories, a load more classes of business. And we've also recently just secured some investment from Apiary Capital, which will allow us to sort of put a lot more money into sort of the tech side and the insurance side, with sort of to go alongside this sort of full syndicate graduation and expansion.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, wow, quite a journey. And my next question was probably going to be talk me through the pivotal moments, but it seems like there's been quite a few over the last 3 years. I'll probably change that to what has been the pivotal moments, as in singular, that's really defined that journey and transition to being a data and really analytics-led tech company from what it was before. What was the moment for you guys? Do you feel that it changed?
I think I'll go back to obviously the inception of our actual products, Graphene X, because before that we'd had obviously all the ideas and general dashboards internally, but then turning into a proper product takes totally different mindset. And then that was like 1 week of like quick POC, quick hack we did, and we realized that there's a bigger approach we need to take if we really want to turn this into a product and embed this into the entire organization and have the outward impact within the industry as well. So create tech that's able to grow with the business alongside, not just serve I'd say short milestones or anything. And that realization that how big that platform could be once we start building it was actually a moment where I definitely, I'd say, had to take a step back and be like, will we be able to deliver this big promise of this big platform in a few months' time? And that entire sort of thought process defined, I think, pretty much over 80% of tech stack, to the team structure, to the way we train team, to the way team work. That entire sort of week or so, I think that directly impacted that.
And how do you feel like since that moment, since the delivery of this product, how has it shaped Carbon's identity? And I guess my question is twofold in that why was building, we can get into the kind of details of the product that you guys built in Graphene, but how did it shape Carbon's identity, and why is Graphene necessary now to the business and so core to the business?
I think just to draw a quick distinction around Carbon and what Graphene is, like Graphene is technical arm of Carbon, and we support Carbon with sort of all the tech and data and insights. Now over the past few months and years, Graphene has evolved, which we start to call it, and I think it has evolved into more of a data ecosystem, which has grown from day one along with the business. So there have been various needs, and we've had insurance professionals who've been experienced working in insurance for ages and coming up with many ideas, but we needed to grow Graphene hand in hand with the business, with those ever-evolving ideas, in a sense that one day, once sort of it becomes stable, the stable tech, we're able to reuse and extend and rebuild on top of it. And now, so we sit in 2023, and I think Graphene has sort of every single nut and bolt of Graphene has evolved along with the business and has been rapid enough. And those are sort of some of the strategies which we can later talk about, what strategies we employed to quickly adapt a technical product to grow with along with the startup.
I think just to draw a slight distinction for the sort of the point in time that Nav's talking about. So since the inception of the syndicate, and what I came in to do to start off with was there has been an analytics suite that sits behind it that we called Graphene. Now, the bit that Nav is talking about is where we sort of switched over from being just this pure analytics suite, essentially sort of dashboards, analytics, the whole data model, which is the core of Graphene. But the really pivotal moment was where it switched over from being this sort of internal analytics suite to being this full-on sort of scalable SaaS application, essentially. And that had sort of allowed us to sort of release the product externally and also sort of build a lot more into the product rather than simply just being an analytics suite, which is what it was at the start. And that was the sort of original intention. But then that point, I think, was when the rest of the company especially realized sort of how much more we could do with the product, rather than essentially what is just some pretty pictures. Well, obviously there's a whole load of data modeling and work that goes on behind it, but all of most of what the sort of the consumers of the product see, or end users see, is these sort of pretty pictures essentially. So that's really the distinction of when it switched to being the sort of the full-on SaaS application.
And why was it that it was so important to invest in that further tech stack for you guys? You know, was there an option to buy versus build ever, or was this just something that you just don't see in the kind of MGU market at all?
I mean, really, honestly, there's never really been when you say buy, as you mean sort of acquire another company to do it, or do you mean buy as in like to just invest in sort of a new tech product?
Invest in a new tech product, or invest in something to integrate, you know, bring something in-house, rather than you guys have built this from the ground up?
I think when building, we definitely had thoughts around initial stages around whether to acquire certain pieces outside or capabilities, but we also had a great opportunity to start greenfield. You know, we could have went out and looked around a lot of platforms that you can redesign or configure to work in the way you want to be. One of which I think we know the big boys, you know, one of the largest SaaS product company there in the world, and their platform is quite configurable. But then for us, it was holding that opportunity that it's greenfield. Let's start scratch. Let's pick the lean stack that we can, and build fast, fail fast, learn fast, and iterate fast. And during that process, we would have known that things that are not working, we might need to change approach, pivot, and get another one. Instead of having a waterfall approach that, hey, we're just going to go buy this big platform. Instead of that, let's quickly try and test small things, small implementations, and get it out in the hands of underwriters, the actual users, as soon as you can, even if it's in a silliest way it can be, and then let them use it, experience it, bring it back. And then that sort of entire iteration sort of journey helped us focus on keep building it from scratch as greenfield, because there was more value in that than sort of value over effort. We would have seen that how much effort we're spending producing, how much value out for the business with this tech. And I've definitely seen that incremental value coming out. And that's where this decision was, let's keep building greenfield. Let's build let's build their best platform ever that they would have built. And I think everyone, like, you know, especially Mark coming from banking and all of the other guys in the team coming from various different industries, we've sort of tried to employ all the best practices, all the best experiences, and try to deliver the best platform so far.
The Lloyd's market has so many quirks as well. You're sort of building something, and it hasn't been done before, really, because it's such a quirky sort of marketplace. Like they're building only at the moment a core data record, which is literally just like a standardized method of sort of communicating risk level information. You would, in every other industry, they have that already. You've got a sort of a way that you sort of transmit messages about whatever you're doing, trades or stocks or anything like that. The Lloyd's market doesn't have that. They're still building that at the moment. And you've also got all the different classes between them, which have very differing sort of very differing needs as such. Like, so there are quite a few platforms out there, say for marine insurance, because that's what Lloyd's is sort of that's the core of Lloyd's, is marine. But for the stuff that we're doing, we might want slightly different analytics to what another company might want, and it's sort of having to rely on someone to build those for you, rather than sort of having, as Nav said, just the speed to be able to sort of go. One day someone goes, oh, I'd like this bit of analytics, and you can just immediately provide it for them, rather than having to sort of this whole sort of route of being like making a request for it, maybe being charged for it, having someone come back. So that process, we can build it. If it doesn't work, we can immediately get rid of it, rather than spending a couple of weeks with a tech provider trying to sort it out.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, when you talk about the where the insurance space is in terms of, coming up with that data model, comparison to other industries. Being new to insurance myself, I've said it sounds quite bad, but you don't really have to build something off the wall in insurance. You just kind of have to build something decent, and you will be lauded as heroes in the space. Anything that's not an Excel document. But you guys have built something truly innovative, truly cutting edge. How, again, just to kind of explain the value from it, the value proposition, how does what you guys have built in terms of graphene and carbon as a whole contributed, how does this product truly disrupt the insurance market from an underwriting perspective and provide that competitive edge that for the Lloyd's syndicate program that they clearly saw in it?
So I think the main thing that we provide, and at least to everyone that we work with, is this transparency that isn't really seen elsewhere, especially in binder business. Because the method of communication, for anyone not aware, is a bordereau, which is an extremely old-fashioned way of communicating stuff via Excel. It's essentially every single sort of row in an Excel file is a different risk that you've got in or a different policy. And sort of joining those all together from a variety of different cover holders. So we've got, I think, sort of 20 different cover holders, or MGAs is the other sort of word for them outside of Lloyd's, that we get these bordereau data. We get this bordereau data from. Every single one of them is different, and we then have to standardize all of those into this common data model, which we can then provide. And then once it's all standardized, we can then provide this to everyone else in the chain, and we can also do the same analytics. Provide them to everyone else in the chain, so we can provide them back down to the cover holders. In some case, they often don't have the sort of tech capacity to sort of draw these sort of bit fancier conclusions from their data. Also, the brokers, reinsurers, we've got follow markets as well. So we've got Lloyd's first variable property consortium as well. Just a bit of a mouthful there, but and our reinsurers as well. So reinsurers often won't know what risks they're on for until 9 months after they've written them, or 9 months after the syndicate they're attached to have written them. We will provide that information to them as soon as we know it. So as soon as the border is uploaded into the system, as soon as we know it, our reinsurers have access to it, cover holders, follow markets, everyone like that. So it allows not only us, but also them to react to any events that happen a lot more quickly than 9 months. So sort of 9 months, especially for property data, you already had all your claims within basically the first 9 months anyway. So it's a bit late to sort of make any changes to your portfolio. So that transparency between all of the parties involved is really, I think, at least the big thing that we're innovating for at least the big thing that we're going for with Graphene.
No, exactly. And then going back to like the actual sort of the technical value proposition, which often I've seen, like, been around insurance now for a couple of years, is gets alluded where a lot of insurtechs or new solutions start to pitch a lot of buzzwordy solutions that, hey, we've got AI powered this, we've got AI powered that, or a blockchain solution to do X, Y, Z. But a real data product cannot fly very, very far without a solid data model in place. And as Graphene, behind the scenes, we've spent a lot of time on polishing, reiterating on top of our data models. And the common data model that we've got in place, that's the only reason we're able to do really fast delivery of innovative products, innovative microservices within Graphene ecosystem. Because someone wants to build an ML capability now, someone wants to build an automated capability now. It's all very straightforward because the common data model is there, and hence the team talks the same language. There's that data culture which gets embedded throughout the company then. So then your tech is company, your company is tech in a way. And I think often it gets sort of sidetracked with the value proposition where it's often sort of presented as the tools, the products or the consumer layers, which we've got a great consumer layer, serves great user experience, but powering that, the real IP, the real value proposition is a common data model which powers all of that.
And kind of leaning on more from what you're saying there, Nav, around the ecosystem of graphene, like I'm always interested, and I know the listeners are from a tech perspective, where, what considerations are there for you as the kind of product leader, working with the executive team, working with the tech team as a whole, when you're, when you take into it, what I found was interesting, that one, you chose Python as the role of language. I believe you're on the kind of the Google integration system. I believe also you've got a bit of monolith and microservices in terms of architecture. Like, the thinking behind languages and various architectures for me is interesting. I hope it's interesting for people listening. But, could you kind of talk me through your mindset and considerations when factoring all of these things in before actually building Graphene, and I guess why?
Very interesting question. Yeah, I get asked this question very often. Sun insurance as well. You're not going to believe the very first when we started drawing the actual architecture after having the realization that we need to now put Graphene X, the SaaS product, into picture. The first language we wrote on the whiteboard is the OG PHP. Show PHP, it's the time we need to decide our stack. We're building a modern web application. Like, cool, no, shall we pick Java? All the considerations around what frameworks are supported and what everything else is supported. We've talked about Python as well. And often what I've seen in sort of when building tech greenfield, the tech is heavily influenced by the lead developer, the lead engineer, the CTO in the team, the lead technician. Often the tech and the stack is influenced by their experience. Whatever they're comfortable writing it goes with that. But here, I think we've made a bit mindful choice. Now, we had to consider not just what Ferg and I could write, the languages we could write the platform in, but we also had to consider that it is a company that everyone's trying to create. Yeah, we're trying to create an innovative product. We're trying to disrupt the industry. We're going to grow a team. We're going to sort of have many unseen challenges coming up, where we're not going to become 100% tech company per se as well. So we shouldn't think like 100% tech company as well. So what are the tools out there we can pick that will give us that flexibility to grow, to innovate, and to do all sorts of amazing things? And that's where the decision, first thing first, to go with Google Cloud was one thing that it outstands, I think, is the documentation side of things. The documentation of Google Cloud to a newbie does not sound very or look very, very technical. If you go AWS or Azure documentation and ask a graduate, be like, hey, can you learn these tools? And it's going to look very, very sort of serious documentation. Whereas Google, I think that experience is very easy for a new learner to come in. And then a few other consideration around sort of the capabilities of Google around its power on offering, auto ML services, where sort of you just got pre-built ML solutions and quite robust managed services, which are at times way cheaper than AWS as well. So all those considerations help us decide our, I think, the base foundation, which is Google Cloud. Now what we're going to innovate on top of it. So we had to pick language of choice. Python came no-brainer because the community support behind it, the documentation around it, every other university is teaching it these days, easy to learn, and good support around it, and good community guidelines around it. And that sort of then started influencing all the other decisions, like which backend we need to pick. such as Django. Shall we go ahead and build everything in Flask as microservices? Now, distributed microservices for everything sounds so cool, but then when you also got to work really fast and create a tech that should scale as you grow as a business as well. And again, it's not a tech company. It is, tech is the unique value proposition of Carbon. So how do you sustain, how you grow with that? There's not going to be enough time if we build all the microservices and after 7 months or 8 months, we come back and refactor it. How are you going to handle that technical debt? So why can't we pick something like Django, but deploy it in a microservices way? So have it set up in a monolith way, but deploy it within your infrastructure. Our infrastructure is very microservice oriented. It's not monolith at all. In fact, Django is just a tiny microservice within our entire ecosystem. And but the platform, the code base itself is very monolith. That saves us a lot of time in innovating. That helps us to not rewrite any coding standards per se, because we could enforce Django's coding standards or Python's Pepite coding standards, and then we can make sure the code quality is always going to be consistent across the team. And now we've got a team of over 15 employees and 15 developers, including developers, quants, everyone and anyone who's contributing to the code base, from building ETL pipelines to building, production product services. And we don't really have to go and enforce code quality rules, standards, and anything, because we've just picked something that's worked in industry, that is stable, that people also want to know. It's a two-way thing. A graduate or an employee comes work for you. They also want to learn new things. They also want to make their CV shine for future. So what can you give back to them? And the decisions around these services then got influenced, not just, as I said, the key technology member of the team, but the overall strategy, the vision. You got anything?
I think Nav also saw my face when he wrote Java and PHP on the whiteboard. And I just on the verge of a mental breakdown, thinking I was going to have to learn 2 brand new languages that I'd barely even heard of before. So that was potentially also it. But basically, everyone in my team at Carbon and the analytics team is a graduate as well, and we're not computer science graduates or maths, physics, sort of the problem solvers rather than sort of pure computer science. Python is just the most taught language. Everyone at least knows a bit of it. That it's quite a comfortable language to learn. We're also not looking to. We have no need for sort of a super low level programming language. We're not doing anything like sort of nanosecond trades or anything like that. As I say, a bordereau comes in once a month. Like, while some of our services need to be fast, they're realistically like Python taking 20 seconds to do something that could be done in a second really doesn't matter that much to us. If we're looking, obviously it's nice to have everything fast. Everyone likes to say how quick their things are compared to everyone else's, but it's a lot easier for us to use that. And also it comes with a lot, like Python is a very safe language to use. It does a lot. It protects you a lot in a way that the other lower level languages don't. So it's a lot easier to teach graduates. It's a lot easier for everyone to sort of like get involved with, really. Because that is the culture in Carbon is everyone get involved, try and get involved in every project. If you want to do some Django, while it's sort of quite advanced at the moment, we're happy to let anyone get stuck in and have a go at creating a service within it. Airflow, again, it's easy. There's a lot of pre-built stuff in Airflow as well. Like there's all these new tools like Dagster and Prefect and all that. But really, Airflow's been around for a long time. It's got all these pre-built modules. It's very easy just to sort of get something done that you might have to build in Airflow, that you might have to sort of build something custom for in Dagster or Prefect.
And that goes back to empowering your team to do the innovation without worrying about the infrastructure and nitty-gritties of anything. And we sort of have a culture of full cycle development. And anyone and everyone in our team who can write a line of code, we just encourage them to go and play around with the infrastructure, because the way the tools are all positioned and built up within the infrastructure, there's very little way they can do anything bad. And so that just also allows people to, move fast with the innovation. If they've got new ideas, they can prototype it fast. But also, once they prototype it fast, they need to deploy to production. So they don't have to really go reinvent and rewrite the entire code, because the infrastructure is built in such a way for everyone is they can just employ the full cycle strategy from MVP to the final production release, and have no worries about code qualities or things breaking or even things affecting any other applications.
It's interesting. I mean, I love it that it's all based on, I think at the heart of everything that you're saying and considerations, it's based a lot on culture at Carbon and for the people. And I hear different considerations, speaking to CTO last week who decided to move away from relational databases and host everything on vectors and graph data models, but none of the team had used it. But he was like, I know this is better and it will get things. So we're all just going to have to learn a different point of view. Maybe not so great for culture and adding more and more people into that environment. And then on the other hand, you have people that choose an insurance languages based on maybe the complexity of data that they have. So a very obscure language. I think we spoke about it off camera. Someone we've had on a podcast that used Haskell, based on its resilience and ability to do what that space needed it to do from a data volume capacity. Again, not tons of people versed in that language, but it's interesting and just, yeah, it's just an interesting perspective as to why you considered the stack that you did. Nav, not coming from insurance, I was kind of keen from a product perspective to know for you, was there any quick wins for you in terms of coming in at carbon underwriting, fresh canvas, if you like, plain canvas coming in? Was there any quick wins within the existing technology that MGAs or, underwriters and insurers were not using? Were there any obvious gaps for you to fill as a product leader that you could spot straight away? Or, is that a kind of fair question?
I think I come from consultancy experience. Last 4 years, I've been working with big corporates building tech data products for them, and the life is really slow. And if you're building one piece of tech, you probably be stuck there for 5 to 6 months. And I think one of the biggest wins was the realizing, and that 1 week, which we've talked about at the very beginning of our talk, is that realizing that if we need to deliver this big vision, we need to build our own shopfront, we need to build our own product, a SaaS application, and we need to have control of everything ourselves. Then that will allow us to move faster, way faster, without any restrictions. And I think that was one of the quickest wins, and sort of I would add up to my sort of legacy at Carbon. And it's just realizing that we don't really need rocket science solutions right now. We just need simple ways of doing simple things, but in a scalable way, in a structured way, so that they could be replicated like a copy-paste method. And now you've just recently talked about, how someone vouched for vector databases in their team and be like, hey, we just got to go with that because we know this is the best thing. Now, we've done something similar. I wouldn't say that we've always we've just went to all the graduates and say, hey, we're going to use whatever you've learned in your degree, because academia and professional world is very different. We've built, the tools. That Airflow is quite a complicated tool for a graduate to jump on. DBT is quite a complicated framework for a graduate to jump on. Django is quite complicated framework for a graduate to jump on. What we did is make the onboarding and learning process so easy for them. So it's almost seamless. And I think that, and another sort of, just adding up to your question, is delivering those pieces in boxed manner and then seeing results coming back, not just for me, building product wasn't just building Graphene X and then seeing the usage of it and the adoption of it, but also building the infrastructure and seeing the team adopting to the infrastructure and delivering without having any questions and coming back to me back and forth. And that was because that is also, I think that is 80% of the product. The team's able to support it, build it, grow it, and add up to it. And I think the implementation of those reusable packages, reusable chunks, and guidelines in place allowed me to see those things coming out very quickly, where teams just able to deploy things themselves. And then that had a sort of direct impact on what we deliver on the product side of things, because now we're able to, both Ferg and I were able to give proper time to underwriters and understand their needs. And you got to know your customer, your user first, and then work backwards. And now we were understanding them and then coming backward to our, sketchboard and trying to see what would work for them. Not a rocket science solution. Can there be something as simple as a pop-up model, a table editor, which would make their life easy to like save n number of hours in their day?
Interesting. And kind of going, when you were talking about onboarding the engineers, culturally, it seems like you're never done building a culture. You're always building a culture. Seems like to date, you guys have got it pretty spot on. I think it sounds like a very fun, fast-moving, innovative place to work, which is what everyone wants right now within a tech company. But in the very beginning of this episode, you touched on the distribution of carbon being almost 50-50 in terms of insurance people and tech people. That I always kind of go back to saying it's about kind of winning hearts and minds within a company that was once not, or built upon mainly non-technical people, and then to transition into that. And again, off camera, we all talked about that transition that you had to go through between tech team and insurance side of the business. Like, was there in that transitioning, what for you guys have been, now that you look back on it and you see the day-to-day activity, the weekly activity of everyone operating in the same way with your tech stack, what are the kind of most valuable takeaways in those pivotal moments of that transition for you? Because the reason why I ask is that a lot of companies are going through that transition you're going through right now. And I think these types of insights and takeaways are so valuable for those going through that journey themselves.
Yeah, so I think we can probably start, like, when we first started with the whole sort of like Graphene project, this sort of analytics system, we thought it would be this sort of all-seeing, all-knowing, sort of lots of machine learning and cool AI stuff and like statistical modeling and all that sort of business that would help sort of predict where the loss ratios can be sort of like decreased, areas where we should sort of pull out of, go into, like all these sort of like the predictive analytics essentially. And while we are getting there on that, I think what we realized after a bit was that the real power behind it, at least for now, is sort of improving the efficiency within the company. And so having the tech team integrated with the underwriters slowly, I think made them realize the sort of power of the power of the sort of product that we were providing to them. So we had someone from the analytics team sitting with sort of someone who's sort of assigned to, or at least sits next to, every one of the underwriters and the underwriting assistants. And they realized that not only was this like the analytics were helping them sort of like with this sort of portfolio level view, for example, the sort of more senior underwriters being able to look at their, not just individual binders, but look at the whole casualty portfolio. That would often take months beforehand to combine this up into one view, but it was sort of there immediately for them. And then there's the sort of more efficiency on just on the standard sort of menial day-to-day tasks you do as an underwriting assistant. A lot of the tasks you do are all to do with sort of data cleansing, data extraction, sort of maybe sort of putting in predicting categories for stuff by just like going in and randomly typing or selecting from drop downs, stuff like that. So we were able to automate a lot of that process. And so I think they realized after a while the power of having this sort of larger tech team that was very integrated with the company as opposed to most other companies that just sit on a different floor, or they'd be known as like the IT team essentially, where it's just like fix your computer and sort of sort out Excel, give you some tips on Excel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that shift from us thinking that it was going to be about predicting and sort of all predicting the future essentially within insurance, to this sort of just like getting the efficiency of the company up. Obviously, we're moving towards predictive analytics now that we've got there. But it's allowed us to have a lot leaner team, just sort of company wide. So we've got currently no one. With all of our reinsurance is done automatically, just sort of straight extract from our data model into sort of a variety of different sort of bordereau and extracts. Normally, in most companies, you have several people, especially even our size, that would do this. Same with finance. All of these sort of reports and regulatory reports that have to be done. I remember our compliance manager, Sonia, we just did an extract for a very simple extract for, at least very simple for us. And she was like, in my last company, this took 3 months for everyone to come together and do this. And having not been from insurance, you don't really realize how long some of these things take until someone tells you, and you're like, oh, well, this is really where the value lies, in having to have a lot less people and making the people who are there a lot more efficient.
And like really having like, you know, that underwriter influence into the tech. Like one of our underwriters, Giovanni, really loves to say, like, you know, Graphene is a platform built by underwriters for underwriting, and we can that's really happening because of this this culture, this cross collaboration.
You do have to be careful sometimes with your sort of innovation as well. Because I remember there's been a few times where Nav has come to me with this really cool idea. He's like, oh, I found this cool new product, or this cool new tech tool. You can do all this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, hang on a second, Nav. Let's just actually check if anyone wants this before. It might only be a week, but let's actually check if any of the underwriters will use this. And we go to them like, nah, useless. We'd never use that. And it's like, oh, well, I'm sort of glad we checked that beforehand. It's like especially within tech teams, there's a lot of sort of want to use cool new tools that come out, and like new machine learning, like all this sort of like trends around like LLMs and stuff at the moment. It's like all these companies may say they've got an LLM, but is anyone really going to use it? Sort of we created our own, it wasn't quite an LLM, but it was a sort of a search-based analytics tool. And it's amazing for presentations. Everyone loves it. It looks really cool, but it's not used as often as we thought it would be. We assumed that everyone would use it the whole time rather than searching for sort of dashboards and for various things. And it's not to say it's not used, but it's used considerably less than we thought it would be. And it's good. We could have spent ages developing our own LLM and sort of putting in all the company's data to it. But for that, we were like, oh, we'll try a quick sort of pre-boxed solution, see if that works. If it does work and everyone likes it, then we can switch to something a bit fancier.
Yeah, that's you know, like you can keep building all those fancy solutions out there in the market. If the users are not adopting it, you can't really force them to use it. And it's within insurance, I think what we've seen, it's more of a cultural change for underwriters. The culture's been that we talk through spreadsheets, and that's the world. And now all of a sudden, it's a massive culture change, which often needs to be done like slowly with your users and stakeholders, than just enforcing that, hey, this new way of generative AI is gonna change the entire sort of world of underwriting for you, because all these ideas have been there, and we've had so many amazing things built into our product from like last 2 years. But whether our users use it on day-to-day basis, not that often. And would we want to force them use it? Why so? If it's not adding any direct value to their day-to-day job, is it saving them any time doing their job? Is it giving them extra bit of information to do their job? If it's just like a nice fancy thing to have there, then we just gotta, I think, from everyone, from product point of view, really gotta think like how to position those things down to your users.
And it's fun to do that though, isn't it? It's fun to build new exciting things, but then, you know, someone like Fergus can actually maybe say, right, do we actually need this? And we had a guest on the podcast that kind of talks of that. You know, it's almost like the silent killer of startups in some way. People trying to create too many products, you know, too many features, and it's about trying to find the balance of what's actually needed and probably what's just a bit of maybe a side project. But guys, we're sorry to kind of cut you short, but we're out of time. I think we're going to have to get you back on for an episode number 2 because I had way much more to ask you.
Two people, it's twice as much talking, right?
It is. But look, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I really loved that piece at the end on, that transition. I do feel like it's from my conversations, we hear about it a lot in terms of changing that mindset, changing that way of integrating, as you see, the IT teams over here almost in a black box and the rest of the business over here. And again, culture's never fully built, but you guys seem like you're doing it fantastically well. So it was hugely insightful, a lot of fun, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting, sir.